Hello and welcome to June week number 5 in the Grand Gate Gardens case study. Now, June week number 5 covers from June 28th to July 5th, so it does go over June 30th, which is not only the end of the month, but also the end of the quarter. So we do get to cover a lot of great things in this June week number 5. And as an added bonus, we're also going to be using Dext. So we're going to be signing up, connecting Dext to the QBO software, and then using this June week number 5 paperwork, putting that into Dext, and then having Dext sync that information into QBO. You'll get a front row seat on how to use Dext to create QBO transaction entries from synced documents. And you'll see the benefits of using Dext. I'll cover a few of the pros and cons, and I'll also share some of the trip hazards that I've seen trip up Dext users when they're using the software to create those QBO transaction entries. You'll also get to see me sign up for Dext and set up the QBO integration to the Grand Gate Gardens QBO file, and all of the setup steps that I do when I first connect Dext to the QuickBooks software. Now, you do not have to use Dext to complete this case study, because you'll still see what that transaction looks like in QBO, how it would have looked like when we entered it if we weren't using Dext. Dext is just a method of creating the QBO transactions. But document management software and digital documents are really how the industry is moving to right now. So I thought that it was important to sort of show you or illustrate for you how that looks with the bookkeeping. But this case study really has been focusing on the documents, how they are to be represented in a bookkeeping file, whether it's QBO or not, and whether you're using a document syncing software like Dext or HubDoc or not. So with that being said, let's get started on June week number 5 for the Grand Gate Gardens case study. Now, as always, I start with uploading the bank feeds, and you'll see that when we start using Dext, having those bank feeds there to refer to is really, really helpful. So I'm in June week number 5. I'm going to go to bank feed downloads. I'm going to use the QBO files, and let's pop them in. We go to transactions, bank transactions. Drop this down, upload from file. Here's the Canada Bank. All right, and then we're going to upload the savings. Next, we do the CIBT line of credit. And lastly, we're going to do the triangle M card. And our bank feeds are uploaded and ready to go. So next, let's sign up for Dext. So I'm going to start a free trial, and free trial for business. And this is as if I'm Sarah Travell, Grand Gate. So I just verified my email, and I'm going to answer some questions as if I'm Sarah. So for industry, I'm going to say retail, and we're going to say 2 to 9 people, and we're going to say we're going to use QBO, and welcome. So when you start your Dext account, you can add users. So right now, only Sarah's email is a user, but you can invite other people to the team. So you can have your office manager be able to sort of upload documents as well. Also, each user can go ahead and put the app on their phone after this so that they can upload receipts using their phone, which is one of the most convenient aspects of Dext. You can also forward in emails, and when you forward in emails, if there's a PDF attachment, that becomes the document, and if there's no PDF attachment, the email itself is the document. So that's helpful to know. As the user, the email address to forward into, we can go to Users, and we go Manage, Edit User Details. And down here you can see that is the email in address that Sarah can use if she wants to forward in her emails. Now, if you're a bookkeeper doing bookkeeping for other clients, I really suggest that you take a free trial with Dext and play around with it the same way that we're doing the case study with QBO to get a feel of what it's like on the user end of the business owner or the office manager that's sending the documents into you. Next, let's talk about how to integrate the Dext file with the QBO bookkeeping file. So I'm going to go to Business Settings, and here is where we can see connections. And here is where we can choose which connections to add. We're going to connect to QBO Online, connect to QBO, and connect. So this is the first time I've actually done it as the business owner. As the accountant user, I've had to sort of log in and then select which of the client QBO files that I have access to as an accountant user I want to connect the Dext account to. But because I'm doing this now as the business owner, and because, and this is important, I was already logged into QBO, that's why I didn't have to re-log into QBO, and that's why it didn't ask me what file I wanted to connect it to. It just assumed I wanted to connect it to the QBO file that I was logged into. But we're not done yet. We still have to set up some of the integrations. So finish. So the default published destination for costs, when you go to enter the QBO transaction into QBO from Dext, you can either choose cash or credit card, which is the expense entry screen in QBO, okay? Remember, Dext isn't made just for QBO. Dext is made for Xero and QBO and all the others that it listed, but those are the two that come to mind. And because of that, it sort of has to be all things for all softwares. So where it says cash and credit card, that is the expense entry screen, the one that we use to put in our charges. The check is the check entry screen. We've talked about that before. Its limitations to only be able to be paid out of the bank type accounts. So when using Dext, if I want to put in an expense entry in the expense entry screen, I use the cash option. Both cash and credit card will take you, or will create, should I say, that expense entry in QBO. The bill option, when you're putting in a cost using a bill, it's just the bill entry screen in QBO. And the credit note, that is your supplier credit screen in QBO. And then the credit card credit is also a credit card credit entry screen in QBO. So right here, so this is just setting up the default, and you can change it at any time. And it also depends on the business, right? So if it's a business that gets a lot of bills and not a lot of receipts, well, let it default to bill whenever it sees a cost come through. But if it's the type of business that doesn't get a lot of bills, but more has a lot of receipts, then maybe you would want to have it default to the cash. And again, you can change it at any time. And Grand Gate Gardens really is like 50-50. So we'll just leave it at cash for now. And this is just the default for things it's never seen before. You can set up defaults to specific vendors as you go as well. Default item for sales, the same idea. The sales invoice, that's how we've been using QBO, creating an invoice. And then the sales receipt. We did talk about sales receipts earlier on in the course, but we've just been using the invoices. Another thing that's important to turn on is warn me when I create a new supplier. So you can actually, if you get a bill or a receipt in from a supplier name that isn't already in QBO, Dext can add that supplier name for you. But your supplier name already in QBO is probably different slightly than what Dext reads on the bill. And so it'll come up with a new name, like instead of like maybe all of your Canadian Tire receipts go to Canadian Tire, but it sees something that says Canadian Tire Gas and wants to create Canadian Tire Gas as a vendor, and you don't want extra vendors or duplicated vendor names. So having this little button turned on to say, hey, if when I go to enter the cost into QBO, it's a new supplier name that you're adding, let me know. That's great, because you're like, whoa, 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 I already have this vendor in. Oh, I don't want to create a new name. I don't want too many duplicates. So that toggled onto yes is an excellent idea. Now, I haven't played around very much with the purchase order matching, but we'll say yes, make it strict. That's usually easier, I would think. We can always turn this off if we're not happy with that choice. And we can do expense claims with Dext. Now, that's not in our June week number 5 transactions, but what happens is if an employee uploads a receipt that you're going to add to an expense claim, and then you sync that expense claim into QBO as a bill, which we were doing without Dext before, this also, instead of it just being the form, it also makes sure that the receipts that are uploaded are also synced into QBO. So I would definitely say yes to turning that on as well. So prepayments, that's not covered in June week number 5, so we're just going to leave that one blank. So right now, this is important that we want to make sure that we select the right tax item that's used by default on all of the expense entries that we put in. So we're going to say HST on is the default. And when we do get a meals receipt, we can change it to Meals HST when we're doing the actual syncing in the costs section. But like almost all of them are going to be HST on. Next is whether we're using exempt, out of scope, or zero rated for those items that have no HST on them. So we're going to default to zero rated, and this is just for costs. So if you remember, the only difference between zero rated and out of scope on the expense side is things that are listed as zero rated or exempt, they'll show up as 0 in the GST detail, and things that are listed as out of scope don't show up on the GST detail for ITCs at all. So it really doesn't affect the general ledger. A 0 is a 0. So we're just going to say zero rated. And the default tax for sales is HST Ontario. And I'm not going to set up a default right now for tax. As I mentioned before, it is important when it comes to sales. Zero rated is if you're selling honey. Exempt is if you have like daycare income, and then out of scope is like a shareholder deposit that has nothing to do with sales at all. So it is important on the sales side, but we're going to leave this one blank for now and tackle that once we get to the invoices. Now, when it comes to automatic publishing, I have the same stance when it comes to auto publishing as I do with the auto entry on the bank feed. We want to see it. We don't want to set a rule that we think is good and then it goes rogue and we don't even see the rogueness that is happening. Over automation can get very dangerous. Now, I think automation can be very helpful in very structured settings. And so it might be something to consider in very limited examples. So I don't write it off all the way. But I tend to auto-publish nothing. And automatic publishing is the same as those automatic bank rules. Like it will see a cost come in, it will make its guesses and put that transaction into QBO for you without you even checking that maybe your rule wasn't set up right or maybe it read it wrong. So for all of these reasons, we're going to keep automatic publishing off. So that's it for the initial setup integration for Dext with QBO. You can change these settings at any time. I'm just going to show you how to get here if you want to change them after. So it's under Business Settings, then you go to Connections, then you go Manage Settings, and that will bring you right back. So while we've been setting up these initial settings, Dext has actually gone ahead and synced a bunch of lists in Dext, pulled it right from our QBO file. So right here under business settings, we can go to lists, and categories is what Dext calls GL accounts. So all of the different GL accounts in QBO, all the ones that we've set up, you'll recognize these. These are the ones that are in our QBO Grand Gate Gardens file. Dext has already pulled them over. Now I did mention during the setup that we can add a supplier name right from Dext and add that to the list in QBO. You cannot, as of this taping, add a new GL account like that because there's a lot of questions that each of the different softwares ask. So it's not really something right now that Dext is able to do. So if you do need to add a new GL account and then have that represented in Dext or pulled back into Dext, I'm pretty sure it does sort of every now and then do a reload sort of in the background, but you're going to want to force that because you're in the middle of doing stuff and you want it to show up. And this is where you would reload the list. So again, going back, if you're in costs and you want to add an expense and you're like, oh, I've never done donations before. I want to add donations GL account to my QBO. You can't do that here. You got to jump over to QBO, add a new GL account, come back to Dext, you go to business settings, lists, categories, and then that's where you can hit reload, and that's when it will review the QBO GL list, see if there's any missing, and pull in the new ones ready for you to use for whatever expense you were trying to put in. There are other lists that it has pulled in as well, other than all of these ones. The main two, of course, are your suppliers and your customers. So let's go back. And right now we're in our costs inbox. This is where all of the bills and expenses that we upload show up, ready for us to push into QBO as a transaction. And you can see here is where the suppliers is. So I'm clicking on suppliers, and here is all of the suppliers. Look, Chocoholics Nom Nom Nominous that we have in QBO already. And again, if you do happen to add one in QBO and it's not showing up in your Dext, you can come here and hit reload and it'll refresh the connection, take a look to see what it's missing and pull over the new ones from QBO. So there's actually a lot more to unpack with Dext. You can see we've got expense claims, supplier statements, there's all sorts of Dext goodies that we could look into. But this course is all about learning how to do bookkeeping with the case study file Grand Gate Gardens. So I'm just going to be sticking to the basics of using Dext, how to put in expenses and bills using Dext when you yourself or your clients are uploading the documents digitally. So we're going to be sticking to the costs. And what we're going to do is we're going to add documents. Just a side setup, Fetch. Fetch is kind of neat when it works. So there are a bunch of utilities or companies, ETR, for example, where Dext can actually pull the bills right from your account with that vendor. So for example, Kudo, it was an example. Instead of you or the business owner having to upload every Kudo bill to Dext each month, you can have Dext automatically fetch the Kudo bill and bring it in for you, hands-off automated. So that's a fun thing to look into. So let's go back to our inbox. And you can see there's an inbox for costs and an inbox for sales. There's also an inbox for bank, but for the purposes of today's case study, like I said, we're just going to be focusing on the costs. And in the inbox, it's empty. There's different ways to add the documents. Like I said, you could take a picture with your phone, you could forward in an email, or you can upload right from your hard drive, which is how we have the Grand Gate Gardens case study source documents stored. So let's go ahead and add the first folder, the charges folder. So we go to add documents, and you can see we can add sales or a bank statement or a supplier statement as well. And we can say who is uploading the documents right here. And the one document per page, I wouldn't select that. The reason it's there is if you've got a supplier who just sent you 12 bills in a 12-page PDF, that is when you would use the one document per page. That's an example. So what's going to happen is each and every page will be split up into its own item, which I guess is helpful if each page is only one thing. But I have never received a PDF document where every page is one item. Even when it comes to downloading like bills from a supplier, there's bills in there that are 2 or 3 pages long. So that is useful in a very limited, unique situation. Otherwise, one document per file. So our QBO bill, for example, will have 3 pages, but it's one PDF, and it will be shown as one thing or one item in our inbox. So we can drag them in, or we can just select files. Here I am in June week number 5. I'm going to go with notes. I'm going to go to the charges. I'm going to select all of these charges and bring them over. You can see there's 11 items. Let's see if all 11 upload happily. So I'm going to click it in, close this. And you can see here it is processing all of the different items. And it does say it's happy with all of these. So let's come over. You can see the inbox is empty. If I hit refresh, a few should pop on over, and I'll show you where they're coming from. So only 5 have popped on over. That's because the other 6 are sitting in processing. So you can see right here, it's having issues with this Gmail. Of course, like this is what that is trying to process right now. An actual email conversation that Sarah has sent us. And it's trying to figure out what to do with it because it is reading amounts. So for example, let's look at the DaddyGo. And you can see this is the document that was uploaded, and what it's read is it's read the date, it's read the supplier name, the document number. It doesn't know what GL account it wants us to post it to, but it has read the amount and the tax. So that's what it's doing right now in the processing. It's got these ones that it's a bit confused on, so we can see right now it's taking its time on the supplier name, this one supplier, the document reference number. So eventually it might go over, or we might have to push it over ourselves. But we'll let it wait to see what it figures out, and we can work first with these 5 that are currently in the inbox. So let's start with one that we're familiar with, GoTellACommunications. And I'm going to collapse this so we have a bit more space, and you can make it bigger like this. One option to zoom into it. And we can see that it's July 1st, it's internet, and it's charged to the Biz MasterCard. So let's talk about the section over here and also setting up the payment accounts. So the fact that it says invoice, that's just Dext's way of saying bill. If you remember, GoTellA's invoice to us is our bill. So invoice bill, so that's its way of saying bill. It successfully read the date as July 1st, but we can switch it quickly to January 7th if it read it backwards. We'll talk more about that soon. And it's read the invoice number for us. Right there, perfect. And it's also inferred that the due date was July 1st just because it doesn't say anything. It doesn't say due upon receipt. So I think it just defaults to the same bill date. And we're going to talk more about due dates when we get to the GNOME hardware. So it guessed internet as the GL expense account to post this to. You could see we could select any of the existing GL accounts in QBO. And this icon here is just letting us know that it chose internet by default. And it didn't that information didn't come from somewhere else. These are other options that we have available to us when we post things in QBO, but we haven't been using them in this case study. Here is the description. If you remember, I only put in the description if it's weird or an asset purchase or an equipment purchase. So for this, it's none of those things. But you can see you can quickly pop it in, boop, like that if you wanted to, and that's automatically read from Dext as well. Now it's gone ahead and read the total amount of the bill, which is $62.15, and it's also extracted or read the tax amount. And because we said that this automatically defaults goes to HST Ontario on the defaults page, whenever it does extracted amount, it's going to go automatically to that HST Ontario default. So if we wanted it to go to something else, we could select Meals HST or another option from this dropdown. The amount that it's read for the HST is $7.15, and that was correct. And it also means that the net amount, the difference between the two, or the pre-tax total, is $55. Now, moving down to this important section right here. So the paid, I think it's something internal in the Dext software. I haven't seen how this translates to QBO yet. And we can actually set default rules. So every time it sees telecommunication, what do we want it to automatically do? So that's useful. You'll see right here that it doesn't know how it was paid. We say that it's charged to BizMC, but that's not a payment method that's set up in Dext yet. Also, you'll see that it says that we're going to publish this to cash. What that means is in QBO, when you go New, Expense, this entry screen right here is what Dext considers the cash. Publish to cash means publish to expense entry. Or publish to credit card is also publish to expense entry. When you see publish to check, it is publish to new check right there. And in our case study, I have not really been using the check entry screen because we can only choose bank type accounts. I can't choose things like the credit card. So back over at Dext, because we're saying publish to cash, back over here in QBO, I'm going to go New, Expense Entry. You can see we have to choose a payment account in order to put an expense entry in. So we have to tell Dext a payment account when we publish to a cash entry. Now, if we had decided instead to put this in as a bill entry, again, over in QBO, we go New, Supplier Bill. In this screen, you can see it does not need a payment method because it offsets accounts payable. So in Dext, when we say bill, it's not screaming at us to choose a payment method because one isn't needed. Even if we did select one, it would have no effect on the bill entry in QBO. That payment method, when this is set to bill, I think is more of an internal sort of tracking thing with Dext. But this GoTellACommunications is in the charges folder because the bill date is the same as the pay date and there's no check number to track. So when I am syncing documents into QBO from Dext, I always have QBO open on another monitor. In fact, I usually have it open on my main monitor and Dext is on my secondary monitor. I really like sometimes seeing the context in which a vendor has a bill, so I might go to expenses, suppliers to sort of see the context of the paperwork. And also I find that the bank feed is extremely helpful to refer against. So in this case, this is the Biz MasterCard, and this just says charge to BizMC, and we can confirm. I'm just going to make it bigger this way. And so that is $62.15. Did it get charged on July 1st? I'm in the MasterCard, so $62.15. Search, and we can see that yes, on July 1st, it did hit up the credit card. So back here in Dext, I'm going to switch this over to cash or credit card, 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. It's the same screen. And the payment method, this is now where we're going to do the next step of the Dext to QBO integration. When we drop this down, this is listing all of the payment methods right now, like as of this moment, that Dext has sort of read in the documents we've uploaded. So there is a document that we've uploaded that has a payment using a card 5252. Dext read that somewhere else. So what we want to do is we want to take this payment method and we want to link it to the M card, the triangle M card ending in 5252. So new, that means that Dext sort of read it. So we could do this a couple of different ways. We could do it on the fly here. So add payment method. So we could call this one, for example, BizMC. And then the reference is 5252. And we're going to link that basically every time we say BizMC 5252, what GL account is it going to put that, that entry towards? So we can say triangle MC 5252. I'm going to add that. So now when we drop this down, there's two. There's the one that we've just created on the fly, which is linked to the triangle MC, and then there's this new one that Dext has read, which is also 5252. You can have more than one payment method linked to the same GL account. So if somebody had said BizMC, well, we know to use this one. If somebody had said triangle 5252, well, we know we can use this one. The other way, if you didn't want to duplicate them like this, so the other way is we could actually expand this out, go to business settings, go to lists, and here we can go to the payment methods. So that's that list, that drop down that we just saw. So we just added this BizMC on the fly, triangle MC, and this is the new one that it read on its own from a piece of paper that had been uploaded. So we can rename that one to triangle MC, like that. 5252 is right, and we can link this one to triangle MC, like that. And like I said, we can have two different payment methods both linked to the same GL account. So let's say if there's two business owners and there's two debit card numbers, and both of those debit cards hit the business bank account, for example. So that's another reason why you might want to have two different payment methods going to the same GL account. So let's go back to our inbox. And I'm going to collapse this. And we were looking at the GoTella. Now, because all of the questions have been answered, including the payment method, we can go ahead and hit publish from here. But I can't necessarily confirm all of the things, just the highlights, but it's not confirming the payment method. And also I was showing you what it looked like from inside. So we were down here at the bottom. And what we can also do is we can come up here, we can set those supplier rules, and we can say, every time you see GoTella, publish to credit card using the Biz MasterCard. So, and then I hit apply. So you can do all different types of settings in there, but now every time GoTella comes up, it's going to set it to a credit card published to and the payment method Biz MasterCard. Now let's go ahead and hit publish. So right here it says it's been queued for publishing. And now it says that it has been successfully published. We can jump to it from this link, or over here in QBO, if we were to drop down this spyglass, you can see that the most recent thing that has been entered is a GoTellACommunications expense. We just put that in using Dext. And this is the entry that we would have put in ourselves, what I call the big screen way. But the difference here, now remember I did show you how to pop in the description. I wouldn't usually do that. But the difference here is there is an attachment right in here. That's the PDF attachment. Here is the actual PDF document that was synced over right from Dext. Now, I have found this so incredibly helpful when I'm sort of checking my work or somebody else's work to see if we got things right, if we got things wrong, or referring to it. I find having the attachment in there actually much more helpful than I thought it would be. And this attachment is now in your QuickBooks file. It is a copy of the original, meaning if you close your Dext account and no longer use it and sort of lose all of those digital documents over in Dext, any digital document that you use to create a transaction in QBO, it's still going to stay there as an attachment. I have used other document syncing softwares before, and the one that I had used at the time, and I'm not sure what it does now, but it only attached a link to the document in the document software, and I much prefer having the actual PDF there. So that's a thing about Dext that I really like and appreciate. So that one is in, and what Dext has done is it's gone to the next one in line. And the next one in line right here, let's make it bigger. So this is a receipt from GoDaddy, or sorry, DaddyGo, as I called it for the case study. And you can see that the payment method is MasterCard right there, very prominent on it. And if we go back to Dext, you can see that if I scroll down, it has selected for us the payment method 5252. It read that it was paid by MasterCard, and it put that payment method in for us. So again, that's something that I've seen Dext do that I don't see other document softwares necessarily do. And this is part of the reason why Dext is my go-to document management software, because I think that that's fabulous. So let's go ahead and take a look at this again. And we can see that it is for the Grand Gate Gardens website domain registration, and it's charged in Canadian dollars. There is HST. Now remember, if you're being charged HST by a business that isn't in Canada, it may or may not be a claimable ITC credit. This is because of that new GST Simplified Regime. I do have a link to that in the description. And the Simplified Regime is if you've got a non-Canadian business charging HST, they're either doing it as a registrant or they're doing it as a simplified registrant. And the simplified registrant is we don't actually get to claim that HST credit. We, as the business, have to tell the supplier ahead of time, we're a Canadian business, don't charge that HST. That is the way that we don't pay the HST on our business expenses. So it's not a setup I think is, I don't really know why Canada set it up that way. It doesn't make a lot of sense, but this is the simplified regime. I talked about it before, and GoDaddy sets my spidey senses up to say, are they going to be charging me on the simplified regime or not? Down here, actually, the GoDaddy has two offices. We can see there's one in Vancouver and there's one in Arizona. And I'm fairly certain that this is because it's a .ca registration. And so the rules, if you want to issue a .ca domain, is you have to be a Canadian business. So that's why GoDaddy or DaddyGo had to set up a domains business in Canada so that they can issue these .cas. All that to say, the GST number does not end in 9999. This is legitimate HST that we can claim, the 299. And I did note down here, I did suggest advertising. That's just obviously one option. Some people might want to track their website advertising expenses separately, but I would call this one advertising to keep it simple. So let's come back and see what Dext has done with this. Now it's called it a receipt instead of an invoice. No big deal. It's a big deal if it's a refund. And also, when it's a statement, it's easier to go to your archives and say, just show me the statements. So this type is really more to do with Dext and also how it's showing the information down here. If it's like a credit note or a refund, that means it's going to be putting it into QBO as a credit card credit or as a supplier credit note. But this is saying receipt, and we're fine with that. Supplier DaddyGo. It looked it up and found that in the QBO supplier name, so it's happy. It put the document reference number in, but it doesn't know what category to put it to, so we can just tell it, put it to the expense account advertising. And again, this is just things that we could talk about in QBO, but we haven't been looking at. And here we can just say domain registration. There's the taxable amount, there's the $299 HST. It's being charged to paid by the MasterCard, and it's publishing to cash because that's the default. Remember, cash, credit card, it's the same screen in QBO, so that it doesn't matter. And we just hit publish. Next up, it's giving us another GoDaddy receipt. Now let's take a look at this one. Now this GoDaddy receipt, it's also charged to the MasterCard, and this one is for a WordPress website. So she must be hosting her website on WordPress. And if we scroll down further, we can see that this one is actually being billed by DaddyGo, the Arizona address. And look, we can see that RT tail to the GST number is 9999. So that's our first clue that this might be actually the simplified regime. This might be GST or HST ITCs or input tax credits that are charged to us by a supplier outside of Canada who is not registered under the regular registry, but instead registered as a simplified regime registrant. Now, as I've mentioned before, These are registrants in which the HST is not an actual claimable ITC credit. And what we have to do, if that's the case, is we need to go directly to the supplier, and there's usually a spot on their website to say, oh, you're a business, what's your business number, like your CRA HST number, and then they won't charge you that HST because they're simplified regime. So you go to the source when it's a simplified regime registrant. Again, I think it's more confusing than it needs to be. Something else that's kind of neat about Dext is that even though this is a Dext upload, because it's a PDF, it has a link in it. We can click the link and it still sometimes actually works. So that's really great. Of course, that was a link that I had put in there in a know me note. But if you wanted to look up if a business is under that simplified regime, you can just Google simplified regime registry like this, and then see confirming a simplified GST HST account number. It's going to take you to the same web page. And then if we scroll down, here's where we can put the business name. So if I say GoDaddy, you can see that GoDaddy is under the simplified regime. And because of this, the HST that they are charging is not a claimable ITC on your HST filing as a business. I do have a link below to my video on the simplified regime that explains it. So we would want to go to Sarah and let her know that GoDaddy is under the simplified regime. We can't claim the HST as a claimable credit on the bookkeeping, and that she needs to somehow let GoDaddy know, I'm a business, don't charge me HST, or simplified regime HST, that is. So we're going to come back over to Dext. And that's a lot. That's $5.20. And if this is a monthly fee, that's like what, $5 for 12 months, 56 bucks. So it's worth her time to go to GoDaddy and find where on their website she can upload her business number to not be charged that HST. Now, what would happen if we did claim the HST? Well, if she was audited or reviewed, CRA would disallow those credits and ask for them back. And then she would be charged interest on the amount that she overclaimed on her return. So let's go ahead and put this in. So we can see that Dext read it right. That is July 3rd. It also has the supplier DaddyGo. Perfect. Document reference number. It grabbed that from right here. So there's GoDaddy's receipt number. And category, again, we're going to say is advertising. And we'll scroll down. And as I mentioned, this is not claimable HST, so we could just put 0 like that. Or we could say that this is 0 rated, like that. Whichever it is, we're just not claiming the HST input tax credit. And it's read already that it was paid by the triangle, so that's nice and convenient. Published to cash, which is that expense transaction. And we're just going to go ahead and hit publish. And now that has gone over to QBO. Now we started a little lower down on the list, so it got to the end of the list and put us back into the inbox. But if we were to start at the top and you can sort by date, so on and so forth, it would just work its way down the list. As you saw us go from the GoTella right into the GoDaddy until we got to the end. Next, let's talk about these Waterstones. I'm just going to jump over to processing, and there's one more here. I'm going to move that to inbox. And let's just take a look at the one I just pulled over. And this is the Waterstone, so it's a restaurant. And very often, and we've talked about this before, a restaurant will give you a receipt for the food that was eaten, and then they'll give you a receipt for how you paid it and the tip. And a lot of times I'll have clients just give me one of these. So if they give me this one, I don't actually know, right, what amount is hitting the credit card, or if it was paid by cash, or if it was paid by debit. Like, I don't know how it was paid, and I don't know the total amount. And so I have to stop what I'm doing, and then I have to go to the bank feed and look to see if there's a Waterstone for July 4th. We're in the Triangle MasterCard, And we can see that there is a Waterstone on July 4th for $58.96. So in this case, Dext would only be reading $49.97. I would have to change what Dext read it as. So you could, like, this slows us down. And also, if it wasn't in the MasterCard, like, how else was it paid? Was it paid by cash? You know, it just slows down the bookkeeping. And it's a similar issue when it comes to the payment receipt. So the payment receipt, even though it does say how it was paid, so that definitely helps, we have to sort of assume that there's HST in the $49.97, back that out, and not have it part of the tip. So there's extra clicking if we were doing it manually. And from a Dext point of view, we would have to sort of break out some line items, which I'll show on another receipt. It just makes things take longer. Another problem that I've found when people use Dext and the business owner uploads the restaurant receipts like this. So not only does that make the bookkeeping take longer, I've actually seen it be a risk to the bookkeeping. So for example, these might not be next to each other. First of all, there could be a lot of different transactions happening that date. Remember, the bookkeeper is like processing not just like 4 receipts, like they're doing 30, right? They're doing quite a few bills and receipts and paperworks that you've uploaded. We just put in the charges right now. There's bills, there's all sorts of things that get uploaded. They might not be next to each other. And also, you can see it's read the date wrong, right? So maybe it's read the date wrong on one receipt and it's read the date right on the other receipt. So for whatever reason, those receipts sort of aren't next to each other. And I have seen new and learning bookkeepers not know to stop when they see this and go look for its partner if it might maybe exist. And what happens if they're just processing, going through all of the receipts uploaded, when they're uploaded separately like this, they'll go ahead and they'll say, oh, $49.97 must have been paid by cash. So they'll put that in, paid by cash, then they'll get to this one at some other point in time, like, oh, look, meals expense, look at that, it was paid by MasterCard. So now you've got the expense in twice. So not only does it make the bookkeeping take longer, it also can cause inaccuracies. So it's inefficient and can be inaccurate. There is a solution though, and the solution is to make sure that the business owner knows to upload them together. So the business owner or whoever's uploading the paperwork can like put the payment receipt next to, and not on top, like tear it apart, put it beside each other, right? And take a photo of the purchase receipt and the payment receipt next to each other. And now we have all the information that we need. We know that it was $58.96 paid by MasterCard on this date, and the HST is $575. It's quick, it's easy, it's efficient, it's more accurate, and it's just a simple thing that we just need to communicate to whoever's uploading the documents. I want to see the purchase receipt and the payment receipt together on one document. And another thing that we do have to let business owners know when they're using Dext is one transaction per one upload, right? Don't put all of the receipts in one photo, because as you can see, we just synced those 2 expenses, the GoTella and the DaddyGo. So you can see how one upload syncs to one transaction in QBO. So don't put a bunch of like receipts all in one photo. So one transaction per photo or upload is also very important to communicate to whoever is uploading those documents. So let's go ahead and take a look at this Waterstone. So when we open up this one, what did it get right? So it got the date wrong, and that's because the payment machine puts the date in a funny way. So we can switch it quickly with one little click. And it got the name. Isn't this interesting? It says Waterstone Gastropub is what it read. And here's that little, hey, that's not in QuickBooks. So if we wanted to, we could just go ahead and select the actual one in QuickBooks. So there's an example of not wanting to make duplicate suppliers in your QBO. The reference is a bit too long. I've seen that, but we can just shorten it if we wanted to. I'm not entering it from here. We're just reviewing what it got. Now it doesn't see any tax, so it doesn't know there's tax. We know there's tax in the $49.97 though. It did know that it's triangle, and it is going to publish it to cash, credit card, same screen. So we're not going to enter it from this payment receipt, but sometimes it's the only receipt you have. We could use a calculator to try and figure out what the HST is, but Right now, the way that we've been putting it in is one line only. We can actually put transactions into QBO with Dext that have multiple expense lines, right? So here's an example of that. We scroll down to the bottom and here's the line items, and we're going to say create line items. And we're going to say add new line item. And it's to meals and entertainment, so that's the category. And the tax rate we can say has HST, Meals HST, right? And the Meals HST, and if we knew the pre-tax amount, we'd put it in there, but we know the post-tax amount is $49.97, like this. So what it's done is it's backed out the HST for us. Now it's not happy because we haven't said there's HST on the main page. So we've got to remember that $575 there. And let's go ahead and put a new line item in for the $8.99. And we can put that here. It says extracted amount, but we'll say that this is exempt because there's no HST on tip. And we'll say $8.99 like this. So it's happy with the total, but it's not happy with the HST. It thinks we've got the HST wrong, and I'll show you where to fix that. So remember $575, we'll say done. And then up here, we'll say $575 like this. And now it's happy. It's happy that we've split it up correctly. So that is how we would be. See how much work that is? Like just the 2 receipts in 1 photo makes it easier. I'm going to actually not publish this, right? I'm going to archive it like that. Archive. So that's one thing that's good about Dext as opposed to say QBO Receipts. QBO Receipts, the receipt will come in and you can create a transaction from it and it can't read at all as good as Dext can. So it's click, 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 super slow. But if you've got like a statement or an email or something that doesn't actually attach to a QBO transaction, you have to just delete it. Like you don't get to keep it. And that's why Dext is great, is because we now have an archive of whether we've published it to QBO or not. We get to keep it all. So I really love the archive function in Dext. Of course, other online digital document management softwares have the archive option, not just Dext. I was just comparing this to the QBO Receipts, which you might have come across. That doesn't have archive, and it also doesn't read as well. So a third-party digital document management software solution is usually worth the investment. Anyway, so continuing on, here we go. What has Dext read when it comes to this 2 receipts uploaded at the same time? So first of all, we can see that it did read the date backwards again. That's because of the payment receipt. We'll quickly flip that to July 4th. We can also see that it read that the supplier name is Waterstone, which is what is on our supplier list in QBO, instead of suggesting Waterstone Gastropub. That could be just because there's 2 different names, but Waterstone appears on both. I'm not quite sure, but it's read it correctly and I'm happy. And it's correctly guessed that this is Meals and Entertainment. So moving down, it hasn't read the comment meeting with client Crystal Ball. And if you remember, whenever we enter a meals expense, we want to say in the description how that meals expense is business related. So if you're the business owner, make sure you write down on your receipt. And if you are the bookkeeper, that's something to communicate to the business owner that if ever audited or reviewed, a CRA wants to know, how is this meal business related? So let's go ahead and add in here, meeting with client Crystal Ball, like that. And you can see that what it has done, what Dext has done, it has read the total amount that's being charged to the credit card, $58.96, correctly, even though it had 2 options. It also correctly read the tax amount of $575, even though it's not on the second receipt. So this is a great example of why I love Dext, how its reading capabilities I have found to be not perfect, but some of the best that I've come across so far. And look, it also has read the payment account correctly. Up here, we say it's paid by the credit card 5252. It's lined that up for us. And we have already gone ahead and linked that payment method to the credit card. So you can see how much quicker that was. It's got everything in correctly. It's much more accurate. It's much more efficient. There is a drawback, though, specifically to do with meals, and this is an important note, is that right here, it has said extracted amount, amount 575. We set up in the settings that the default HST for expenses, as it should be, is HST on, which means that whenever it says extracted amount, this automatically goes to the tax item HST on Ontario. But for meals, remember, we want to use the Meals HST. When I select that, you can see it backs out, calculates the 13%, 678 of the 5896, which is wrong. And Dext doesn't let us change this. So that would be my feedback to Dext to allow us to change the tax amount if we change the tax to a different option. But how do we deal with that, us right now, when we're using Dext to put this into QBO? Well, the first option is to actually say extracted amount here, come down and create line items just like we did, and I won't show you again, with the when we only had this payment receipt, when we didn't have the combination. So for me, that screen takes a little bit longer to click around. So here's what I do. So right now, this is all lined up. I've added the description. It's saying 575 extracted. I'm going to go ahead and publish. Then once I've published it, I jump over to QBO. Remember, I have both up. I use both at the same time. I go to what was most recently entered, which was that RBC. We just pushed that over from Dext. That's how quick it is. Going to open that up. And here's where I can change that HST down to HST meals. Before I do, something to notice, remember the HST is 575 and HST meals splits it into the claimable portion and the non-claimable portion. See how the total is 5896? If I just went ahead and changed this to HST meals, it's going to change it to 5895 because 575 doesn't split nice. I would have to change one of these pennies myself to get it back to the 5896. Again, more clicking, you know me, the less clicking, the quicker. So let me revert. This is how we would come into it. The first thing I do is change this from exclusive to inclusive. Then you'll see that when I change this to HST meals, it does that for me because it's not changing the total of the receipt. So we go ahead, hit save and close, and that is how we put a meals receipt in through Dext. Now, I did give an example of what we would need to do if only the purchase receipt part of the meals receipt is uploaded. So that's the next one in line here. We can see it's read the date wrong again. So I'm going to flip this to July 4th. Waterstone, that's correct. Meals, that's correct. Now it thinks that the total amount is only $49.97, but it did read the tax, right? So what we would have to do is we'd have to stop, we'd have to go over to the bank, we'd have to figure out how it was paid, and we'd say, look at this, $58.96. We can change the total amount, $58.96, while keeping the extracted amount at $575. And we can manually say that this was paid by the Triangle MasterCard. And then we can go ahead and publish and do all of the things that we just did to change the HST to the Meals HST. So that's how you would handle this if you only got the purchase receipt, but we've already put in this Stonewater meals expense, so we can go ahead and just archive this and see what's next.